Hello and welcome to Thrive at Home. My name is Sam.
Hi, I'm Carrie.
And today we're going to talk about the subject of guilt.
Yes, that I call it a pesky little emotion that we have that tells us that something's gone on, right? It's indicating something. We struggle with it. And if we don't handle it and deal with it right, or in positive ways, it's going to affect our relationship with others.
Correct. So first of all, guilt is an emotion. And so it represents, typically it's a warning sign that something's come up, right? Something has gone on, a behavior, something we said, something we did. Could be something we thought we said, something we thought we did or should have done.
Right. Violated a conscience, violated some sort of a moral conduct, something that's expected or required of us.
Right. So, and then we feel bad about it. And so in itself, guilt can mean a couple of different things.
Sure.
So first off, you got to kind of know what guilt is. But the problem with guilt is that frequently people carry it around far longer than they need to.
Right.
So when we're looking at guilt gone wrong, that would be guilt gone wrong.
Right. Right. But I think originally guilt is kind of intended, somewhat intended. That feeling is intended to make us pause and change.
Do some evaluation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was going to tell a story. I don't know if this is going to launch in exactly, but I used to play a lot of junior golf and played competitive golf. And there's two types of golf tournaments. One was stroke play, where you counted every single stroke. And then the other was match play, where it was hole by hole. And I was much better at match play than I was at stroke play. Because when you had to count every single action that I did over the course of 18 holes, I would struggle because I would usually have a few holes where I really screwed up. But match play allowed you to play one hole at a time.
Right, you start over at
every hole. So you had 18 basically potential points. And I was actually very good at match play because those holes were behind you. It's like, okay, I just lost a hole. If I lost a hole by 10 strokes, the next hole you started over.
Right.
And I think sometimes being able to reset from guilt, that if you can do it effectively, it's like playing the game of life match play instead of stroke play. So instead of like, oh man, what I did on the third hole, is still affecting my relationship, which is, you can't do anything about the past. You can't go back and fix that. And I think interpersonally, that's where relationships often have a difficult times because there's really no way to repair when we've emotionally screwed up.
Right. That's a great story.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with that. I like that because when guilt has a way, when it goes unchecked or unaddressed, it has a way of keeping you, in a sense, stuck in the past event.
Yeah.
And we can't live our lives in the past, or at least, you can. You're more than welcome to. But you're going to have a more fulfilling life when you're living in the present and you're looking forward and understanding that you have the choice to make changes right now, today.
Yeah.
Right? That it doesn't have to be an add up of everything that's gone on.
Yep. Okay, so the first thing is you want to evaluate where is this guilt coming from. And so first off, there is sort of healthy guilt, and then there's unhealthy, well, we could almost say is unhealthy guilt. And this comes from morality. So this is very interesting. Depending on where you come from, you really can't have guilt without a sense of morality. So if you have no sense of right and wrong, and I'm going to have a caveat to that, but in a sense, if you have no idea that you've broken a rule, okay, or hurt somebody's feeling, you're not going to have guilt about it necessarily.
Right.
Okay. Now, I also believe that we have an internal conscience. Okay, and so sometimes there is an internal trigger that says, "Ooh, I said something wrong," even if you don't see anything external. But typically, what happens is we learn as children, right, that we have broken a rule or we've done something that's not okay because we've been informed by it as
an adult. Right.
So an adult is saying, hey, you've crossed this line here, and so that you should feel bad about that because we want you to recognize the impact both for yourself and for others so you can change.
Right. So determining what kind of guilt that you may or may not have, and then why you have that. That's very important to understand. And sometimes you may need to pull out a journal or pull out a piece of paper and write it down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we read, like, if you're writing something down, an event that you feel guilty about, and you say on a scale of 1 to 10, this is an 8 or a 9, I feel pretty bad about this.
Right.
Then you start to evaluate and say, oh, well, if I think about it and I think, well, if I had done this instead of what I did, and you're feeling more calm or more restful about that, well, then you've got a pretty good indicator of how you can go back and how you can change moving forward. So it really is going to benefit you to understand what kind of guilt it is and why that is happening for you.
So let me give you an example of bad guilt. Okay, so bad guilt it's that you were maybe trained that something was wrong, okay, that maybe you now discover isn't. Okay, like let's say finishing your plate. Okay, well, there are a lot of people who feel guilty about not finishing their plate at dinner. Or moms may feel guilty about going back to work after having a baby. And clearly there are societal pressures, or maybe families who choose to send their kids to public school, or they send their kids to whatever. I mean, we all have these things, and then society puts pressure around our decisions, and so we can struggle.
And even our family members can do that too.
Yes, because we might choose to make some different decisions than family members, and so we know what their opinion is, and so when we do that, we could be internally feeling guilty about something we've already made peace inside. So that process can really be challenging.
Right.
Okay, so you want to evaluate the guilt. Then second is if you have done something wrong, right? So if you recognize, whoa, that behavior wasn't okay, this is where you want to take action, right? You want to make changes. You want to make amends.
That's right. You begin to address it sooner rather than later.
Right.
If you need to ask for forgiveness or something like that and go to a person, or even forgiving yourself, which is huge. When you're talking about guilt and how that pressure that you put on yourself and that emotion it brings pressure. You need to look at forgiving yourself. And I
think that's really big, because it's hard to say, in a sense, it's hard to say sorry in general, and I think it can even be harder sometimes to say sorry to ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I think this is another thing about guilt. I know I have a lot of friends who are Catholic, and they talk about the guilt trip, the Catholic guilt trip that people can go on. So sometimes that hypersensitivity can really cause us to beat ourselves up, because we think that by adding guilt to our lives, we're going to help ourselves improve our behavior. So that the answer is yes and then no, because it like some correction, internal correction is good, but kind of continually heaping that on ourselves can actually throw a roadblock to where you get stumped and you just stall.
Right. So determining if you need to go make amends, do it sooner rather than later. Change behavior if behavior change is needed. And I think one of the last things, and this to me is huge, is your expectation of yourself. Is no one is perfect. We're not created to be perfect. It's just not in us. We have flaws.
Right.
I have flaws. So if I expect, once I change behavior and I expect myself to consistently do that changed behavior, I'm going to disappoint myself, and I'm going to find myself in guilt. And that new guilt, if we allow it, can add to the old guilt, which makes it even, it's more crazy making.
Right.
So just, once you begin to say, I'm going to change my behavior, right? And my intention is this, my goal is this. You can find somebody to be accountable with.
Right.
You can ask for help. And then at the end of the day, whenever something happens and you do mess up or something doesn't go right, it's okay. You just go back and you start again, and it's okay.
Gotta keep moving instead of getting stuck.
That's right.
All right. Well, I'm sure in this case, when we get done with this video, we'll think of more things we could have said, and we'll have the opportunity to beat ourselves up and have guilt and say, oh, I wish I had said this, or I wish I didn't. But hopefully you get the point The guilt can be both a positive thing, all right? People who don't feel any guilt, that's dangerous, right? So if you never understand, and I think a lot of times it's just that awareness of like looking into your environment and paying attention to how other people are reacting. And then you've got to both take that information, okay? So when we go into new situations, take that information and say, wow, I got to evaluate that. Did I do something that I should change or not? And I think the ability to, or is this just something I'm struggling with inside that this situation is not really calling for? Right. So I hope that you've gotten something for your maybe potential struggle with guilt, that this is something that we've said here today that will help you free yourself up. So you got to let it go, move on in the end, because no one's perfect.
All right.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.